First thing I realized about retwisting is that it doesn't help your hair lock any faster, and it may actually inhibit your locks from growing thicker and locking faster. From my experience from having my locks for 9 months now, it doesn't. Retwisting is simply only for making your locks look more neat. If you like the crispy parts look, or you like them to look smooth, or you like to do your edges. Those are all valid reasons to retwist your hair, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, it's just something to note, because I think a lot of people think before they get locks, or when they first have started locks, they may think that they have to retwist their hair in order for their hair to lock, and it's not true. Hey y'all, welcome back to Holistic Flow. I am your girl, Lolo, and today I'm going to be doing a video on semi-freeform locks and why I am never going to retwist my hair again. Yeah, I've just made that decision probably within the last month of having my locks, because I realized a few things about having locks, particularly my hair, and retwisting and what it actually means to retwist and maintain your hair when you have locks, of course. I can't really stress enough that, you probably hear a lot in these videos that you're speaking from your own experience when you're talking about hair, because the only person's hair you can really speak for is your own. And if you relate to any of these things, I hope you do. That's completely great. But if you don't, of course, take what you can and then leave what doesn't serve you. My experience isn't suitable for everybody else's experience. So that being said, let's get into this video. So to get a deeper understanding of why I decided not to retwist my hair again, I'm gonna go over what retwisting is to me. First, I'll give some backstory on my hair for anybody who's new to my channel. Hello. I started my locks in November 14th, 2020. I started my locks with 2-strand twists. And when I first started my locks, I really valued crispy parts. So I did these boxing parts sections where I used the rat tail comb and I made them real crisp, real nice. They looked real clean and everything. And that's, again, what I valued when I first started my lock journey. If you can tell, I don't value that anymore as much. In the first 3 months of having my locks, I retwisted my hair every month. So on December, January, and February, around either the 14th or the 15th or the 16th, I retwisted my hair 1 month apart from each other. But that was only for the first 3 months I had my locks. After the first 3 months, I realized that I probably didn't want to retwist as much. So I started going a little bit longer in between retwists. After my third retwist, I probably retwisted again in the middle of March. And the last time I retwisted my hair was in May when I was graduating from college, because I wanted a crisper, clean look. After the month of May, I decided that I was going to start semi-freeforming my hair, which to me meant that I would only retwist my hair 3 to 4 times per year. So that would mean every 4 months or every 4 or 5, one of those numbers. I still planned on retwisting my hair sometimes, just not very often at all. And this was because, number one, I started to get a little bit lazier and didn't really want to retwist as much. Number two, I realized I liked the look of the roots growing out. I like that a bit more than seeing my parts and everything. And number three, I felt as if going longer in between retwists would start to give me thicker roots, which now I know that it definitely does. And now within the most recent month is when I decided that I was no longer going to retwist my hair at all. And it's because I noticed what retwisting was, at least for me. So when I retwisted my hair, I guess you can break down retwisting in that process in 3 separate steps. First, you pop your locks or separate your roots, which may consist of using a comb sometimes to separate my parts so that the square parts that I originally laid down when I did my starter locks could be shown. And then I would separate my hair at the root, because after you wash your hair, your locks are usually fused at the root. They like to marry. So I'd have to separate my roots. That's the first step. The second step is the actual retwisting. So I would pull my hair at the base of the lock, kind of like this, and then twist. So this process of retwisting, or this motion, is like pull and twist, pull and twist. And you're like pulling your hair at the root, taut, and then twisting it in the direction that you first started your lock. If you did two-strand twists like I did, it's in that direction. And then the third part would be holding it down with those clips, those metal clips that you use so that it doesn't become untwisted. The first thing I realized about retwisting is that it doesn't help your hair lock any faster, and it may actually inhibit your locks from growing thicker and locking faster. From my experience from having my locks for 9 months now, it doesn't. Retwisting is simply only for making your locks look more neat. If you like the crispy parts look, or you like them to look smooth, or you like to do your edges, those are all valid reasons to retwist your hair, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, it's just something to note, because I think a lot of people think before they get locks, or when they first have starter locks, they may think that they have to retwist their hair in order for their hair to lock, and it's not true. If you look at semi-freeform locks, you'll see that our hair, if you have afro textured hair, it locks on its own when you just leave it alone and don't do anything to it. Our hair literally is made to tangle up. Like, you know that if you have loose natural hair and you don't comb it or detangle it, it starts getting really tangled. Eventually, if you leave it uncombed for a couple months, it will start to turn into a lock. And that's the same thing that our hair does by itself, without any manipulation, without any retwisting. And the second thing I noticed is that it actually might hinder the ability for your hair to lock. And I have really no science to back this up, but this is just my natural logic. A lot of people probably will disagree with this, but let me explain why. If the process of locking requires your hair strands to shrink and shrivel up in order to tangle up, then the process of retwisting, which involves stretching your hair, pulling and manipulating your hair, contrasts the process of your hair tangling and matting. So when you're retwisting your hair, you have to pull your hair, and so then you're pulling your strands like away from each other. I remember whenever I would have loose natural hair and I would have a knot in my hair, I learned how to get my knots out of my hair very easily, because when the knot is like scrunched up, can't get it out as much as when you can pull it, and then you can see better where the knot is. So you start to pull the hair strands one by one until the knot is out of the hair. Well, I apply that same logic to retwisting your hair. When you pull your hair, you're kind of like stretching the hair strands out, and that kind of naturally untangles your hair strands, which contradicts the process of your hair tangling up and locking up at the root. And when you simply think about the process of leaving your hair undetangled and it locks up, you would think the less manipulation that you do at all to your hair, the more it can lock. It just makes more sense to me. So it makes more sense that, at least for my hair, the more that I just leave it alone, the more that it will do its natural thing and lock up. So in that respect, retwisting to me simply seems unnecessary. Maybe I should note that I'm not a loctician or a hairstylist or anything like that. That type of thing that we do to listen to our own bodies and not really go off of what other people are doing with their hair. I mean, we can always use it as, a guide or a inspiration. Hopefully, by sharing my logic and the way my mind works around these certain topics like retwisting and manipulating your locks, maybe it inspires somebody else to not do as much manipulation with their locks as well. I hope you find what works for you and take what you want and leave what you don't. Now, I have a couple of other reasons why I no longer am retwisting my hair, and they're just, I'll just read them. Number one, I think it looks a lot better on me when I just like see my roots. I forgot what video it was, but I said in a previous video that later on in your lock journey, sometimes the values of what your locks mean to you change. So again, I said when I first started, I valued crispy parts and that nice clean look, but currently my values changed and I don't value that as much anymore. I think it still looks cool on people. For me, in my house, in my body, it's not that much of a value, so it kind of doesn't really matter if I see my scalp or not. However, if I do want it to look, more maintained, then I will do a braid out or twist out, which is what I mostly do actually after I wash my hair. So I'll wash my hair immediately while it's wet. I will braid it up or twist it up and then leave the braids or twists in for a day and then take it out, and I'll have wavy locks and it looks very effortless. So that's always an option if you are semi-free-forming and want it to look like something other than straight down. The largest reason is simply because it's a lot more low maintenance to not retwist your hair at all. Depending on how many locks you have, retwisting your hair can be 45 minutes to 2 to 3 hours at a time. And if you retwist your hair, maybe let's say every 2 weeks or every month or even every 2 months, you can probably get redundant, especially because when you do retwist, if you get caught in the rain or if humidity hits your hair or if anything like that, your retwist is gonna be gone in like a week. So you retwist your hair just for it not to even last that long. That's another thing I realized, and it kind of seemed unnecessary to even retwist in the first place if it, number one, does not help your hair lock any faster, number two, is gone in a week, and number three, it simply takes a long time. Why not just let your hair do what it needs to do and possibly and probably lock faster and growing a little bit thicker because you're manipulating your roots a lot less. Which brings me to the third reason. I have some edges that are kind of thin, especially at the temples, the side of my head right here. So let me get real close right here. This lock right here is pretty thin. I would say it's hanging on by a thread, but not really. It's kind of just, it could use some work, right? So I started to notice that it was really thin at the base, but then at the end, it just gets really thick. And mostly it's thick at the end because of bunching my locks, bunch a lot because I started with longer hair. And because I sometimes have thinner edges at the front is like, for everybody, the most vulnerable part of your hair. That's another reason why I didn't want to manipulate it as much. When you don't retwist as much, you get more time for your roots to grow out and compact in each other and form a thicker, more strong foundation for your locks. And the last reason pretty much is because I believe that less is more. And especially with locks, I feel like that is true with all aspects. Less products, less manipulation, less styling, less touching your hair, which I touched on, no pun intended, in my last video my last lock video about hand and hair syndrome and the spirituality kind of your hands, the energy that hands carry, and having your hands or other people's hands in your hair. Simply less of everything is more. I believe, at least for me, this is true, that the simplest your routine is for maintenance, the better off you'll be, the happier your locks will be, and they'll thank you by flourishing. And I'll reiterate that I haven't retwisted my hair since May of this month, It is now, what month is it? It's the beginning of September. My locks are already looking a lot thicker than they were back in May, mainly because they've budded a lot more and they've matured a lot more. They're still not fully mature, but also heavily contributed to the fact that I haven't retwisted since then. At the end of the day, simply do you, and doing you is better than doing anybody else. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that I'll see you in the next one. Until then, I'm sending peace your way, love your way, and joy to you, your family, and your friends. All right, y'all. Peace.